Okay, so we can probably talk about Shopes and Ciceroning and all these crazy things for a long time.
Whatever. We can go on and on and on. We
Right.
can do multiple episodes. Let's go.
Let's just keep going. Hey all, Amanda here, and welcome to episode 83 of Great Beer Adventure. And it is time for another long show. I'm really excited to jump into this week's show, as it has been a very long while in the making. Before we do, however, I want to remind you to text GBA to 31996 for info on your free coloring page. It's quick, printable, and did I mention free? GBA to 31996. On to the show. Hey everybody, I am in a loud space tonight, which is really strange because it's a Tuesday, but I am at Great Lost Bear where they have, I don't know, is it 70 beers on tap?
75, I think.
A
Something
crazy,
like that. Yeah.
crazy amount. And that voice that you hear is Tom Bull, the brewer, owner, co-owner of Dirigo Brewing Company. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
So we're going to really get into your story during this episode because it's really fascinating to me. But let's start with a quick little bio of who you are.
Sure. As the nachos arrive. All right.
We got nachos here, and Great Lost Bears have these amazing mushrooms.
Yeah, they do. Those are incredible.
Those are like my favorite mushrooms ever.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just quick, tiny bio. What do we need to know before we get to know you more?
So I'm Tom Bull. I am a native Mainer. I grew up in Bath. Went to Morse High School and did all that. Went away to school and then came back home. And when I was about 19, my dad and I started brewing beer together. I entered a few contests and realized that I won. I took home the blue ribbons. Back then there was only one homebrew shop around. It was on India Street. It was called Harbor Homebrew.
Oh, really? I've never heard of that place.
Yeah, it was down by Amato's on India Street.
Oh, I know where that is, yeah.
And that was the only place around to buy any sort of brewing equipment and ingredients. And we were actually using bread yeasts, like Fleischmann's dry bread yeast back then.
And it worked?
And it worked. It makes horrible beer, but it works. Anyway, so I entered a few contests. Funny enough, there's a liquid malt extract called John Bull.
Oh.
So nobody wanted to drink my beer because they all thought it was liquid malt extract.
Oh, no.
But the judges, of course, had to, and then they realized that it was not a liquid malt extract beer.
Yeah, they definitely have a different taste to them.
Totally do. Anyway, so I won a couple of homebrew contests, and this is in the late 80s, early 90s. Realized I had a knack for it, so I got a job at Gritty's as the bouncer. That was my foot in the door.
Nice.
And the whole time I had my sights set on the brewery. And as soon as the position opened up, I was like, hey, pick the tall kid. And
you are quite tall, so maybe you just kind of literally stand above the crowd.
Yeah, totally.
You can just be stand in the back and still just be like, I will do it.
So I got the job. Yeah, I did an apprenticeship at Gritty's way back when. I've worked at a whole bunch of different other Maine breweries. And here we are now.
Wow. Yes, we're going to fill in that gap here in a minute. But let's first talk about what we are drinking, and then we will pause and eat some food, and then we'll get back to you all.
We are drinking Shops or Shopes, depending
Now, how
on...
do you spell that? Is it like an SCH?
SCHO with the umlaut. Is it umlaut? The two little dots over the top of it. P.S. It's a Polish recipe.
Okay.
I like to do these old kind of historical styles that are largely forgotten. Mm-hmm. Shopes is actually a style. It's a Polish chocolate wheat beer. There's no chocolate in it, but it's roasted barley that gives us the chocolate.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that when I drank it, that there was a roastiness to it. And,
Totally.
And I didn't know if I was making that up or not.
No, it's definitely roasty. And it's the interesting thing is that it's actually a style. It's its own style.
Yeah.
BJCP, Beer Judge Certification Program, actually added it as a style in 2016. One of the few good things that happened in 2016. It's really unique beer. It's about 74% wheat.
Yeah.
But when you drink it, you'd never know that it was a wheat beer. There's no Hefeweizen characteristics, no banana, no clove.
No, it's
None
dark.
of that
It's
stuff.
very dark.
It's very dark. Interestingly enough, all that color and all that chocolatey, roasty goodness
Yeah.
only comes from one bag of grain. The whole malt bill's about 1,300 pounds, and all that comes from 50 pounds.
Wow.
Don't give away everything.
Yeah, that's my wife, Molly, in the background.
Yes, Molly's sitting here at the booth with us today. Thank you very much for showing up, Molly. You may be hearing her voice every now and then. If you want to hear her voice more, though, you can actually go back and look for our episode on the Brewers' Wives.
That's right, I
and,
forgot that.
That was right back before you all opened.
Right.
So definitely for the listeners out there, please go back, find Molly's episode. I will make sure that in the show notes we tell you what number it is, because I can't remember what number. But it'll definitely give you a very interesting perspective after you listen to this to go back and listen before Dirigo got its start.
Yeah.
So we're going to quickly jump into round 2 after we quickly jump into these mushrooms and nachos. But I don't want you all to have to listen to us chewing and eating, so I am going to press pause, and we will be back shortly. For you, it'll be like a second. For us, it'll be a few minutes. All right, talk to you soon. We are back with round 2 for you. But before we start, I just really had to tell you, we had these amazing mushrooms.
Amazing mushrooms.
Amazing. They've got this little ranch.
I'm way out there right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not those kind of mushrooms.
Kind of mushrooms. But they have like this little ranch dip. But the mushrooms themselves have this like char grilled teriyaki flavor. And I didn't realize what a great pick we made, because it pairs so well with this show.
I didn't realize it either, and it's incredible. And I think that I want to try teriyaki chicken with it. Like, I think it's really.
Oh yeah.
Shops is such a unique. I know we started talking about this beforehand, but it's a unique beer. I mean, you think of it as a dessert beer, you know. And it's the interesting thing about the fact that it's its own style. Like, it's not a porter, it's not a stout.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it comes across. And so we get people who say, "Oh, I don't like wheat beers, right? It's 74% wheat." And I say, "No, you don't like Hefeweizen. It's not that you don't like wheat beers, you don't like Hefeweizen." And I guess where I was trying to go before with the fact that all this chocolate and all this color comes from 50 pounds of grain out of that entire batch, is that the wheat translates that throughout the beer so well. Those flavors, it really, they accentuate it. It a little bit goes a long way, you know. And
yeah, it definitely is a very interesting brew, because when you think about wheat, you think about, you know, even the white beers and the Hefeweizens. There's very much even a mouthfeel that is comes to mind, and definitely those cloves and bananas for the Hefeweizens. As a person that knows beer at least a little bit, I feel like I know what a wheat beer is.
You know a lot, yeah.
This is not a wheat beer to me.
It's not what you think of when you think of it. It's not like any wheat beer you've ever had. The other comment that we get a lot is, I don't like dark beers.
Yep.
And then I go, no, just try this. And people go, oh my God, this is amazing.
Right, yeah.
You know, and it's not a stout. It's not a porter. It's its own thing. And it's a really unique historical style. I mean, it was extremely popular in the region that became Poland after the war, in northern Germany. And it's pronounced Wrocław, but to the English-looking, the English eye or the American eye, it looks like Wrocław in Poland, Wroclaw, but it's pronounced Wrocław, and that's where it's from. And it was extremely popular between the 1600s and the 1800s, and then it just disappears.
There's a lot of beers that seem to have disappeared, kind of like the Goza.
Totally Goza, and then made a huge comeback.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of really amazing examples of that style that have come out of the Renaissance from that.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that Schops, because there's two different styles of Schops too. There's a light Schops, a lighter colored Schops, and then there's the dark Schops. And where we opened up in late summer, early fall, I decided to go with the dark one, but who knows? I might do the light version for spring or summer. You know?
Yeah. So the light Schops, does that one have more of those wheat characteristics that you expect?
No, because you don't use a Hefeweizen yeast.
So is that really what it is that adds those?
Absolutely.
Huh.
The clove and the star anise and the spices are things that Hefeweizen brewers add. But traditionally, the style, shops should have, even the light shops should have none of those characteristics.
That's really interesting. For me, I'm getting ready to start studying to get my Cicerone, and I know that you have to taste a beer and be able to tell what it was.
Yep.
The shops would screw me over.
That would totally screw you over.
I'd be like,
absolutely. Be like, it's a porter, stout, something, I don't know, dark lager.
Right, yeah.
And it's not lager, it's actually an ale.
Yeah, somebody told me they got super lucky and they had a Goza and a Hefeweizen or something, and two very obvious ones.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're so lucky.
Yeah, right, totally.
I would not be able to.
Can you pick out the difference between a Pils and a Helles?
No.
It's a tough one. I can do it.
Okay, so we could probably talk about shops and Ciceroning and all these crazy things for a long time.
Whatever. We can go on and on and on. We can do multiple episodes. Let's go.
Let's just keep going. Right now, though, let's focus in on your story. So very much in our shows, when we do our brief brewery bios, we do what is your origin story? How did a brewery get started? But I am really intrigued, more than a 10-minute intrigue into your origin story. So
my origin story is a little bit more than a 10-minute.
Exactly.
Okay.
I named this episode before we ever sat down and called it the Serendipitous Phoenix. We'll get there and you'll tell us about it, but there's this element of serendipity.
Absolutely.
And I really see you as this phoenix that has risen from the ashes and, is flying with an amazing shops. So let's backtrack before serendipity and before the rise of the phoenix. And let's start with your Tom Bull. What is your origin story?
My origin story. Yeah, I just kind of alluded to it a little bit before we took a quick dinner break there, but I started brewing at 19 with my dad. It was something fun and constructive that we could do together, and I was underage, so that made it even cooler, and we started brewing beer, and I won a bunch of homebrew contests, went on to Gritty's, went on to Stone Coast, Casco Bay, whole bunch of other breweries around the state, and beer has always been a passion for me. It's always been something that I've loved and read about and watched movies about and took in every single ounce that I could, literally and figuratively, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
So wound up, I had another brewery prior to Dirigo that was somewhat short-lived. It was a bit of flash in the pan is a real accurate description, but it was a bit of a flash in the pan. I think we were a bit ahead of our time. I mean, it was us and shout out to Jack and Abby from Jack's Abbey. I mean, back in the day, it was just us doing lagers. Nobody else. The first brewery was Bull Jagger was all lager. That's all we did.
Yeah.
Everything was lager.
I was not. In what year was that again?
We opened in 2011 and we closed in 13. So it was a quick run on a makeshift 4-barrel system that has gone on to make some excellent beer. That system actually went up to Rock Harbor. Dan Pease up at Rock Harbor has that system.
Nice.
And he's about to trampoline off of that system onto a newer system, from my understanding, which is great.
Yeah.
And he's making some great beer on it. It's a challenging system, but we were able to make some pretty decent beer on it, I think, for what it was. And it was an interesting focus. For years I had asked all the brewmasters that I worked with, how come we're not doing a lager? And the answers were varied, but kind of along the same theme all the time, that it's not possible at this scale. It's not cost effective at this scale. You're nuts to try and do it at this scale. But at the end of the day, you look at who the largest brewers are in the world and what they brew, and they all brew lagers, Right. So, and it's a largely.
To be fair to the naysayers, though, that's not the best beer out there.
I disagree in a lot of ways.
Really?
I absolutely do. There's a reason that the King of Beers is called the King of Beers.
Yeah. It goes
those
down
guys.
The marketing department.
No, it's not because of the marketing. those guys have nailed it. If you go to Timbuktu and order one of their beers, what does it taste like?
The exact same thing.
The exact
and
same
I do
thing.
agree with that because there's like 10 breweries.
So,
and they all taste
oh, there's more than that.
same.
There's like 26, I think.
Is there now?
Oh, yeah. They have like 26.
Really?
8 in this
that's
country,
okay.
yeah.
Maybe that's what I was thinking about.
You know, those guys have nailed it. And it is, as a brewer, as a professional brewer, and somebody that came up through the ranks,
Right.
not just as a home brewer who decided to open up a brewery,
Right.
As the grunt who was washing kegs at 20 years old. Consistency is king, and that's you try and make every single batch taste the same as the last batch. I want every batch of German pale ale to taste like German pale ale, and in that regard, those guys have really nailed it, and I give props
Yeah.
where they're due. You know, I really do.
I guess what I was really meaning, though, is they do use ingredients that are less expensive for, like, they spend a lot more on ingredients, obviously, because they're making so much.
And arguably, any of the craft, air quotes, brewers that have scaled up to that size,
Yeah.
once the corporate gets a hold of it, they all start to, corporate comes in and they, instead of using Pilsen from Germany, we start using Pilsen from, I don't know, Canada. Or not that, I mean, I love Canadian Pilsner, don't get me wrong. That's some incredible malt.
Yeah.
Or we start to add adjunct grains to try and get sugars where we didn't have sugars before. I guess would be a better analogy than because I actually do use some Canadian malt in my beer and love it. It's fantastic malt.
Yeah.
Which is ironically, I don't know if you know this, Canadian malt is primarily grown by the Amish, which is really cool to me.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah.
Now, it makes sense to me. So I kind of started my beer journey in probably like 2004. My husband and I met. We started drinking beers together, and that's kind of how we got to know each other, was like going and trying new beers. And so by 2008, I had started the beer blog. But by 2011, I was pregnant, and everything smelled like a dive bar's floor on a hot summer's night. Like, no matter how chocolatey it was. So 2011 to 2013, I was not drinking beer.
You were not in the picture, yeah.
I was like, and so it makes sense. But I feel like, wasn't there one of your bottles or something that had a lobster?
Absolutely, yeah. Big Claw Pilsner.
Yeah. Okay.
Big Claw Pilsner.
So
which
I remember
was great.
seeing that.
It's a Czech style Pilsner. We partnered up with a couple of guys who own a wine, Big Claw Wine.
Oh, really?
So if you look at the branding on Big Claw Wine, it's actually the exact same as the bottle of beer that we had back in the day. And we are working on rekindling that flame right now and bringing back possibly anyway, just a little hint
nod to it at least.
Towards summer. For the Pilsner to come back. It's a long story, as most of it. But we actually formulated that. We partnered up with the Lobster Institute up at the University of Maine in Orono.
Oh, cool.
And they have an annual lobster dinner every year. Mm-hmm. And we actually let them choose the vintage, if you will. The way that the recipe was made, the different hop profiles. We offered them, I think it was either 2 or 3 different hop profiles with the same base malts to pick the perfect beer to pair with lobster.
Oh, wow.
And so that became
That's
Big Claw.
Really neat.
It was an incredible adventure.
Yeah, that would have been an amazing story to know back then.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
you weren't
Beer and I
drinking
were not friends.
Understandable. Well, come on, you had little ones out of it.
I do. I have 2 really awesome little ones. We were talking earlier about trying to take off the rose-colored glasses. And no, but my kids are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's because
I've met your kids. They're cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that it's because when I was pregnant with them, I put all of my awesome into them, and I was horrible. I was like the worst person to be around because they were sucking out.
And that's where in the UK they recommend a glass of Guinness a day. Why not? All those vitamins, all those nutrients, all those minerals, all the it's good for you. Beer is food in a glass. I mean, that's why the monks.
Yeah.
Drank beer when they were fasting. Lenten beer, fasting beers are.
Yeah, we would always call. It's funny now that I actually drink beer. Guinness doesn't feel as thick mouthfeel wise as it used to.
Absolutely.
But we used to call it like sandwich in a glass. Like every time that can I have a sandwich in the glass?
Yeah, loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're looking for that thick, the only one that's popping into my head right off the top of my head is Mackeson Triple X. If you've ever had Mackeson, it's a wonderful British UK brewery, and their Triple X Stout is out of this world. The last time I had it, I think we were in the BVI down in the British Virgin Islands, and I found it on a shelf and was ecstatic,
wow.
Just absolutely ecstatic about it.
Yeah. We're going to Puerto Rico soonish, and I'm hoping to find a few little treasures down there.
Might be a few. It's hard, and especially in the southern regions.
But you know what? That's where a lot of people will pack beers and take them on vacation with them. But for me, if I'm eating all those like spicy, delicious foods in the hot, I kind of want something that's more, I don't know, tropical. Like anyways, those. Well,
and what you can find down there is our friends over in the east end of Portland at the Big House, as I like to call it, have some ties down there, and they actually have I think they have a brewery down there now.
Cool.
So you might find some of their beer down there.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in a place, I'm all about drinking local wherever you are.
Yeah.
And so I have heard that Guinness is actually better in Ireland.
Way better.
Right?
Way better.
Yeah.
And, I actually like if you can find the old bottle. They're the old shaped bottles. You can still find them. Like Hannaford still carries them.
Yeah.
It's export.
Yeah, they're kind of yellowish.
Kind of yellow label.
Yep.
Those are out of this world. They don't have the widget. They're the true, like, even though it's still brewed in Canada. I don't know if you know that. It's all brewed in Canada. Every drop that we get in the States is all brewed in Canada. But the stuff with the yellow label is where it's at.
Okay, so let's get back to Bull Jagger. Okay, so Bull Jagger, 2013, things ended.
Done. Yeah, partnership failed and caused the demise, unfortunately, and we wound up liquidating the entire company. I was one of the few in the boom that wound up shutting down. It was unfortunate, and it was the best move at the time, I think, for where we were at. It was sad as it was, and as devastated as I was, it needed to happen.
Between 2013 and 2016...
in that time, well, the first thing that happened is that I have to say that all of the guys who worked for me all went on to further their beer careers, and
awesome.
all of them did fantastic. We referenced Matty J earlier. He's now the head brewer at Baxter. Ian is now down at Tributary, working for Todd, which is a wonderful thing. And Mark actually went on to work at Rising Tide for a while. And then now he started a mushroom farm, which is so cool. He's speaking of the mushrooms we had earlier, right?
Yeah. Is he the one that worked with Lone Pine to do the chaga?
I'm not sure. No. Maybe.
All right. Because I know that they did a chaga beer, like with mushroom.
That could very well be. Is Mark Robinson, Maine Cap and Stem is his company, and they're doing awesome things. Yeah. They're great, and so I think that's the proudest thing that I have that came out. Let alone the recipes that came out of that, and the institutional knowledge that I was able to pass along to those guys. And we settled our accounts, and we got into the swing of things. I actually did. I'm a theatrical stagehand by trade as well as a brewer. I've been a roadie for a long time. I've worked with almost every rock and roll band you can name.
Did you ever, I know it's not technically rock and roll, but did you ever work with Johnny Cash?
I did not work with Johnny, unfortunately. That's one of the few that I didn't. He passed before I had it. I know, yeah. Johnny's awesome. But no, I've worked with rock and roll. I mean, AC/DC to ZZ Top, pretty much. I've done the Stones. Just it goes on and on and on. The box of backstage passes that I have is. I would need to find a way to display it in the brewery someday. But so I went back to doing some stage work. I actually drove a cab for a while, which was kind of interesting, fun. Definitely, that was an adventure.
Yes.
And then in I don't know. I guess it was late 2014. My wife Molly went in to buy snow tires from Paulin's Auto on Forest Avenue, and started talking with Mark, and you're waiting to get your tires changed, whatever. And he's the owner, and they started talking, and he's like, so what are you guys all about? What do you do? Just making small talk or whatever. And So Molly told him about the old brewery, and he was like, "Well, that's pretty cool. Like, why don't we sit down and talk about that?"
At the same time, wasn't he doing something on TV, some like green light or something?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, I think he was working around that time looking for something to invest in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that going. He was working with I think a local investment group, almost Shark Tank kind of group or whatever. I'm not sure. Yeah,
I feel like there was some of that was on TV. I feel like I remember seeing
that
him.
Could be,
doing something like that.
There was something along those lines, anyway. And so he said, why don't we get together after the holidays and have a cup of coffee and chat? And to me, it was, I guess pun intended, was just somebody kicking tires at that point. I was like, come on. There's a bunch of people that had shown interest or feigned interest in kind of rekindling the whole thing. And anyway, Mark and I sat down and started talking, and eventually Molly backed out of the whole thing and let us hash it out, and we signed papers. So, yeah.
So in early 2015?
Yes. Yeah, it would have been like, I guess, March or April of 15 that we decided to go ahead. Found that amazing space in the old mill building at the 11th hour. Like, we were going into we were ready to put the ink on the lease for a place on Route 1 in Biddeford.
Yep.
That would have just been a view of a parking lot.
Yeah, you guys have an amazing view now.
It's pretty incredible.
I'm going to tell you right now, straight up, we're going to steal some pictures from your website to put up so people can see them.
No, please do.
Because it is just so beautiful that they're going to have to be in our show notes just so people can see what you see.
It blows me away every single day I walk in there to be able to look at that waterfall, to be, as a young brewer, when you're, 19 years old, washing kegs, in the back of your head, you're like, oh man, someday I'm going to be like in a brick building, like with wood and next to a river. And yeah, all of a sudden here it is.
Right.
And so I'm extremely blessed to be able to walk into that place and call that my office every day.
Yeah.
It's really a fantastic place to while we actually debated whether or not to put a TV in the place, because you don't really need one. You can sit there and watch the birds and the ducks and the fish and the river. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
it changes every day.
I've spent some very cold days there. Back
before we even had heat in there. I know. Yeah. Yes, we did. It was. Boy,
my little one spent some
we're in there. Yeah.
Cold day there.
Yeah. It was chilly back in the winter.
Yeah.
We were building that place and there was no heat. I mean, it was really.
Yeah, because you guys were the first tenants in that area, right?
Still pretty much. I mean, there's a couple other tenants that had been there for a while, but we're the first major tenant to go into that mill.
Yeah.
And then the revitalization around us has been incredible. We have 87 residential units attached to the building that we're in.
That's really cool for
very
those
cool.
87 tenants.
Oh yeah, and there's a fellow brewer who lives in those apartments.
Yes,
which is really cool.
Yes, Tim Bissell.
Yeah, Tim lives.
Yeah, he was on and talking about his Battle of the Brewery Bands.
Yeah,
which is a great episode. If you haven't listened to it, number 73. It's one I'm extraordinarily proud of. But yeah, he was saying that he lived in that mill building.
Yeah, he and Casey's, and I understand they're engaged. Congratulations, guys.
Yeah, congratulations.
They're, at least I hope that's true.
Yes, it is.
Now that we've said that. Oh, all right, good.
Yes.
Their apartment looks at my loading bay.
Nice.
Directly at it.
That's fabulous, yeah. I think that's really awesome. I actually just learned, so I'm really intrigued by, breweries in other places. It's really... So I just saw...
You mean not Portland?
No, in things. An apartment building with a brewery.
Yeah,
kind of thing. I saw just recently, yesterday or today, there's one that has, a brewery inside a movie theater, which... That is awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then I also learned in the past month of this place down in South Carolina, Frothy Beard Brewing Company. There's a company that just bought them that is a media company because they wanted to have a brewery inside their office. And he's all about making the beer really good, but he wanted to be better than Google. Google doesn't have a brewery. No. He does. So
just throwing this out there. Yeah, sure, I'm in.
Right. I mean,
that's pretty cool.
I think it's really neat, seeing these different things. Like, it's so much cooler than a tanning salon in a laundromat. Like, a brewery in any place.
There used to be a bar in Portland. If anybody wants to do this, I highly encourage it. It was called Bar of Soap.
Yeah?
Way back when I first moved to Portland. And it was a laundromat with a bar. So what else do you do while your laundry's getting washed, right? Like, sit and have a beer.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
I want somebody to open up, like, a craft beer place that is also, like, a salon type thing, but, like, with the nails and the facial, the whole thing. Like, so that... Because so often you go and they're like, would you like wine or a beer?
Yeah, right.
And it's like Bud Light or whatever wine that they want. Now, I want, like...
Craft beer.
I want craft. Like, if Navarre had a spa. That's what I want.
Beer shampoo, right? There
right.
we go. Yeah,
there you
totally.
go. When did you officially open? I went to it, but I can't remember the date.
August 19th, 2016. We officially opened. We were supposed to open way before that.
Yes.
As most brewery projects go, we hit a lot of bumps in the road. Even having done this before, boy, to renovate an old mill building like we did took a lot. And props to the landlord, props to us, props to everybody that was involved. There's some amazing stuff that went on to make that thing happen. But we opened way later.
Yeah, I do believe when we were talking with Molly back on the Brewer's Wife episode, you were hoping to be like February, March?
Yeah, originally we were looking at February and March, and then that got pushed back, and then it got pushed back, and then it kept getting pushed back.
There's so many moving pieces.
So many.
One thing that really frustrates me in my own stuff is like when you have to wait for other people, and like you can't control things.
Yep.
And with a brewery, that's a lot of it.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of waiting for...
You can be so ready to go.
Waiting for puzzle pieces to be put together. And we had the equipment on site in January.
Yes.
We didn't open until August. So it takes that much time to get the infrastructure in place to be able to put it together.
Yeah.
But we did it.
You did. Now, you've been open for August, September, October, November, December.
Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah. So how many different beers do you currently have?
Currently we have, I think it's 6. So we have the lager, which is my flagship. That's what I'm really known for.
Yep. And now, doesn't that take a long time for that one to lager?
So much longer. Just in general, lager takes longer. And it's a product of the yeast and the way that the yeast reacts. Lagers, by their nature, have to take a nap. The word lager inherently means to take a nap, to set aside, to store in German.
I enjoy a good lager then. In fact, I had one today.
Well, when you go to somebody's camp or somebody's cottage in Germany, you go to their lager.
Oh, really?
So it's a rest, right? It has to take a rest. So in comparison, you can crank out a good ale in, we like to say grain to glass. That's kind of the brewer's term, grain to glass, in about 10 to 14 days.
Oh, wow.
My lager, personally, the way I brew and the way that I treat my beer, I'm a minimum of 6 weeks. And sometimes longer, sometimes a lot longer. So it's a product of, it's a slower, because it's a colder fermentation, it's a slower fermentation. It takes a lot longer of a process. And then it has to go down for a nap before it can get packaged.
Right.
And that just allows all the flavors to meld and mature and come around and mellow out and blend.
Yeah.
Almost like wine. It has to mature a little bit.
Right.
I like to say that ale is like
or
a good lasagna. Absolutely, yeah. It's always better the next day.
Yeah.
I like to say, or a soup even. You make a soup and the next day it's so much better.
Right.
Put it in the fridge overnight. And that's essentially what you do with lagers.
Yeah. So we got 6 beers going right now. 1 lager. The rest are ales.
No. So the Helles style is the Dirigo lager.
Okay.
Then we have German pale ale, which is an ale.
Yep.
The rope beer, which is another old traditional style that I resurrected.
Ale?
That's ale. The Schops is an ale. The red rye, which we recently came out with, it's a Rogan beer, kind of a winter Rogan beer. We did it originally for the Pro-Am for Beer Week.
Yeah.
Which is a cool story unto itself. But it's mostly rye, very dark red, crimson-y color. Mm-hmm. Really smooth. It's got that spicy wryness to it, but it's really smooth. And we did it in conjunction with the Saco Salmon Restoration Project. So these guys go and they actually plant salmon eggs upstream. We're right on the Saco River, so it really spoke to us when they approached us. And this beer was like ready to be put on the market, so we just rebranded it really quick and called it Saco Salmon Red Rye.
Nice.
And then the newest beer is the Baltic Porter that we just launched.
And
so that's the other lager.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Baltic Porter. Is a really unique style.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the Baltic states around the Baltic Sea, Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, Russia, Estonia. I think Estonia's in there. All those. I'm pretty sure.
I never was really good at geography, so I'm just shaking my head.
Yeah,
yes.
I could be horrible in my geography on that one. I think I'm right though. Anyway, the states that surrounded the Baltic region. Saw the success that the UK was having with porter. Mm-hmm. And essentially, in a nutshell, they said, well, we can do that. But what they knew how to brew was Russian Imperial Stout, which is, of course, like a real heavy, dark, 14% stout.
Right.
And what they had was lager yeast. So they did kind of a hybrid Russian Imperial Stout lager that comes in anywhere between 7 and 9, 10%. But it's actually lager.
So traditionally, not Baltic porters, but just porters and stouts or ales,
yep.
right? Yeah.
Baltic kind of, and actually Baltic is one of those rare beers that to style can be either ale or lager, but traditionally it was done with lager.
Huh, that's really interesting.
It's fascinating.
Beer is. My mind just wants to run through the let the cogs all fall in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really, I don't know, trying to figure out the difference between a stout and a porter, and then a porter ale and a porter lager, and I feel like you could spend a good, 3 days.
A little more than that.
Drinking
Lifetime.
Every single one.
Yeah. And then go for your sister owner and have her try and pick you, a Baltic porter from a stout. Yeah, good luck.
Oh, that'd be horrendous. Anything else that we should know about this story before we move on to the future and whatever amazingness comes your way? I think we've covered it, right?
No, I think we've covered it.
One thing that we didn't really get about is how Dirigo. I feel isn't it true that you guys had that name picked out for?
We did.
Ever?
Yeah, we did.
Including
we tried
the .com.
Yeah. Yeah. We had originally tried to transition Bull Jagger into Dirigo. That was our plan. It didn't work out that way. We weren't able to manipulate or to maneuver that in that direction. But Molly was wise enough to sit on it.
Yeah.
We had, Dirigo, for those who don't know, or Dirigo, it turns out either pronunciation is correct. Either pronunciation is correct. Either or. Dirigo is the motto of the state of Maine.
Yep.
In Latin, it means I lead or I direct. Obviously, there are people who have come ahead of us, but the fact that Dirigo was available this late into the craft brew game was amazing. In fact, the last beer that we put out under Bull Jagger was Dirigo Crimson Lager. And if you look back at that label, you'll see that the imagery came with us. That intellectual property came with us to the new company.
Nice.
And it's been a challenge. We've been challenged on that name several times.
Really?
We own it. We have the onus is on the owner of the trademark to police their mark and protect their mark. And we have done exactly that. We've had some help along the way. I will say that. Some big help along the way. There will probably be a beer called Thank You, Rob, at some point.
Oh, yes.
Because Rob was very instrumental in helping us protect our mark.
Okay, back on track. Round 3. We needed to know your first beer memory.
My first beer memory, honestly, was... as with most people or most guys, especially, taking a sip of your dad's beer. I can remember a late fall day, and my dad had just re-canvassed an old wood canvas canoe and was painting it red. And I remember having a drink of his, I think it was Schlitz at the time, just a kiss of the hops. That's what their motto was.
I've heard a lot about Schlitz, but never their motto before.
Just a kiss of the hops.
Just a kiss.
Just a kiss. And it was, nasty, right? But that's what the guys were drinking,
right.
Working on the canoe, and I was really young.
Yeah.
From there, honestly, one of my next beer memories would be seeing the original Portland Lager, which wasn't mine, but the original Portland Lager in the late 80s, even before Dave Geary had opened up Geary's. These guys had tried to, they never actually brewed it in Maine. It was a contract brew.
Okay.
They tried to open up a brewery in Lisbon Falls, and it burned before they could open.
Really?
So it was contract brewed, I think originally in New York and then in Wisconsin, and then it went away.
Wow. I have done, by the time this comes out, at least 80 episodes, and I have never heard that story before.
Way before, yeah, you can Google it. Just Google Portland Lager. My images will show up from the old brewery,
yeah.
And then you'll see this image of Portland Lager that has like a lighthouse and a bird, and I think it even has a boat in it. And that was before DL even opened up Geary's.
Wow. We're gonna add a link to something in the show notes because
cool.
That's really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So 4th round, final round. Okay. Now, I have this stack of cards, and literally what I did was like getting to know you questions on the interwebs.
Cool.
And these have all been asked before. I have to find new ones. So, but if I've answered it, what I'm going to do is let you pick one, and I'll answer that question, and then I'll pick one, and you'll answer that question.
Okay.
But if I've already answered it, I'm going to have you pick a new one.
Okay.
Okay? Because we're going to assume that every single one of our listeners out there have listened to every single episode. Right, everybody? We're all listening together here.
If there's an exception to every rule, is there an exception to that rule?
I've actually answered that one, and I have come up with the fact that I'm completely befuddled by that. Sean from the Brewers Guild and I got into a lengthy conversation.
Sean. He's amazing.
He is. He really is. But I can't go down that wormhole again because I still don't know the answer.
That guy has done such amazing things for this Brewers Guild.
He really has. He's a very great guy.
What is your strongest talent?
All right. So I think I've answered this, but I'm going to go for it. Because I feel like it changes, right?
Sure.
So I don't really remember what I would have said last time. But I think that right now my strongest talent would be, and I don't know if it's technically a talent or more of a, I'm going to go with talent because it's honesty. But let me explain why I think that is the case. So often you go out into a situation, and I've been told that other people feel this way too. Like you get so like inside yourself, wondering what other people are thinking, and I get very like my stomach gets all messed up, and I get really nervous about being in front of people. And so one of the things that I am forcing myself to do is to be honest with people. When I'm feeling nervous, I let people know, like, oh my goodness, guys, being here right now totally makes me feel so nervous. And most people don't realize that that is something that would be I would do because I go out and I talk to everybody for the podcast.
Right.
But honestly, the podcast, all the equipment I normally wear on me when I'm out at events, it's really a shield. So I use my honesty by really connecting with people and, you know, letting them know how I feel. And I try to, I'm learning, I'm always trying to become a better person, and I find that being honest with people about my weaknesses is actually probably...
That's very honorable.
My strongest talent. I don't know.
I'm not trying to make fun. It really is.
All right. And then I will pick one for you.
All right.
All right.
Oh, boy.
So, this one was answered by Tim Bissell. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. What is your favorite flavor of jelly bean?
Ooh. That's a rough one. I don't know. It varies.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the few that really like the black ones.
Really?
I like the licorice, but I also like, depending on what the red one is.
So what's a good red one and what's a bad red one?
I don't know. It all like sometimes the cinnamon can be too much cinnamon, or sometimes it's cherry, and you don't know which one it's going to be. And it's just kind of it's a guess, right? Like
right.
so.
And so if you think it's going to be cherry and it becomes cinnamon,
then
your mouth is like, ah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like when you like think that you're going to be drinking Sprite and it's water,
Right.
And it tastes like the worst water you've ever had in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
or milk and orange juice. Don't get those mixed up.
Don't mess those two up.
No,
that's not good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Probably black.
Yeah. Which kind of actually makes sense to me.
Usually licorice.
Yeah. I feel like some of your beers could kind of tiptoe on that line sometimes of like bringing in some of those flavors.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely.
Right? Some of those darker.
Yeah, especially in the darker
not quite licorice,
ones.
but almost there.
I like to. Yeah, I mean, playing with some of those. The clovey, licoricey, star anise.
Yeah, the anise was the one that.
Yeah. Huh. I like to play with those flavors. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're interesting flavors. Yeah.
I know that these are random questions, but I really like hearing the answers because it really makes like somebody become like more dynamic, and you're like, huh. And then other things like start clicking.
Tom likes black jelly beans.
And cinnamon's okay if you think it's cinnamon. Not so much if it's cherry.
Not so much if it's cherry.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for finally, we've been talking about doing this forever and ever.
We should do it again. There's so much more.
What should our next show be about?
Oh, man. You want to just go through styles? You want to taste beers on the air?
What
do you want to do?
Wouldn't
that be fun to go through like a bunch of different styles and
just talk about
them and
what's supposed to be there, what is there, all those things?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
We could do almost like a beer class. We were doing beer classes for a while, just tasting all kinds of different beers, different brands, different style, same style, different brands. Blind taste test. What is it? Do you like it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
You're going to already start blind taste testing me?
Yeah.
I'm going to fail.
No. It's not like you have to pick that up, but it's it's just a matter of going through the styles and what do you like? What don't you like? What do you taste? What don't you taste? It's so subjective. Beer is so subjective. What I like, you may not like, and that's okay.
Especially if it tastes like there's licorice in there.
And that's where you get into some of the apps or some of the rating apps or stuff I don't know, they're hard because it's so subjective and it's not.
Yeah, you can't. The thing that makes me laugh so much is like when people are like IPA 1 star. It tastes like IPAs. You can't give them a 1 star because it tastes like an IPA.
I get a lot of somebody this is a phenomenal lager, but I prefer IPA, so I gave it a 2. What? That doesn't, come on. If it's good beer, it's good beer. If it's well-made beer, you can tell that. You can taste that. It translates. If it's good beer, it's good beer.
Yeah.
And I think props to the people who make good beer. I've been asked a bunch of times, is there another bubble coming? Is this bubble going to pop? What's going on? And to me, that bubble is quality. And if you're not making quality beer, you're not gonna survive this bubble.
For me, I agree that it's quality, but I also think that it's slightly a little bit about differentiating yourself.
Yeah.
Bissell Brothers is an amazing brewery.
Yeah,
they do great
absolutely.
things, but you can't open up and become the next Bissell Brothers.
No, you have to do your own thing.
Because
you have to sail your own race.
Right, exactly. So on that kind of note, we're going to transition into one last thing before we leave, okay? So you're already making really great beers. You already are distinguishing yourself from the pack by, adding those lagers in there. But really, what does the future hold for Dirigo Brewing?
We're going to dig caves in the ground and have huge lager tanks and lager the old traditional ways. I don't know. We're going to continue to make excellent beer, the best beer that I can make and that we can make together. And we're going to reach for the stars. That's why the stars are our logo, right? I mean, we're going to reach for the stars. And
I think that digging holes will definitely differentiate. How many other?
That's. You know why the big boys are in St. Louis?
It's colder?
There's caves.
Caves.
There's caves. Because that's what the old German brewers did with the lagers. The old German brewers would put their beer into the ice caves and store it in the caves underground. And
I know that's like the Oktoberfest. They brew it in the spring.
That was all their beers.
And they would put it in the caves.
That's a whole nother episode. If you want to do an Oktoberfest, the history of Oktoberfest will blow your mind.
Okay, so we're gonna do this one episode at a time. So next time we're gonna do tastings. All right. Maybe we can get a group of people and a whole bunch of mics
That
at the
would be
table
fun.
and do a round table on tasting beer.
That'd be awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to see everything that you guys bring forward, and we're not going to let as much time pass between the idea of the show and the actual show.
It's funny how long we've been trying to do this.
I
I'm
know.
psyched. It's awesome.
I know. This one, though, this show is coming out in January or February, and then we're going to have another one before June gets here.
Waiter, can I have another one?
Yeah, before June gets here, we'll have another episode with Tom
Awesome.
Bull on it.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
A big, huge thank you to Tom Bull and his lovely wife, Molly, for meeting me to chat about the past, present, and future. For links to all things Tom and Dirigo, Molly's episode, and our free coloring page, head to greatbeeradventure.com/083. If you all, our fabulous co-adventurers, would like to support the show, check out our Patreon page. For less than the cost of a beer, you can show us some love. Go to greatbeeradventure.com/support. If you want to see even more from our adventures, follow us on Instagram @GreatBeerAdventure. And be sure to subscribe to the show. That way, you won't miss a thing. Great Beer Adventure is part of the Great Pint Society. Cheers.